So welcome everyone. Very happy that you are all here today about the Learning Lab methodology from the WISH EU project. For those who are here for the first time, I will just briefly mention the WISH EU project is working in small-scale detention houses. It's funded by the European Commission, and the goal is to talk together and discuss within a European network about what it is what the ecosystem of a detention house is. And we are focusing with the learning labs on different topics. So we had 7 topics already, which can all be found on the YouTube website and the WISH EU website. So if you haven't seen them, you can find them there. And today is about methodology, and we have 2 very interesting speakers, I think. So Tobias Merckle, who is the founder of Seehaus, and I think one of the things with Reskilled movement, for example, we are really a movement and trying to define what a detention house is, but at the same time there are hundreds of people and organizations all over Europe that have been doing the work for decades already. So very happy that you are here, Tobias. Thank you. And Berit Johnson, who is board member of Reskilled and has also been doing research into small-scale facilities and many other topics in Norway about the prison system and the criminal justice system. So I'm really honored to have you here as well. Okay, so let's start with you, Tobias. I will make you co-host so you can share your presentation if you want. And after the presentation of Tobias, you can ask questions. Okay. Wait, I completely forget something. The round of introduction, which we always do. So it's nice for the speakers that they know, sorry, I had a week of vacation, so... So yes, let's start with that. It's a short round of introduction. Laura.
So hello everyone, I'm Laura. I'm doing my internship at the moment and at the RE and the Netherlands and Reskilled. So yeah, that's me.
Sarah.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah. I work for Reshape as a project manager in advocacy, and I would also like to thank everyone for coming and joining us in this event. Thank you so very much.
Mark?
Yeah, good morning everyone. The name is Mark Schneider. I'm coordinating the WISH EU project for France.
Daniel?
So greetings and salutations. My name is Daniel Carvalho. I'm a criminologist and I'm a part of a small community and represent several social network pages that I conduct related to criminology and breaking terms, making sure that everyone is on the same page and breaking stereotypes. And that's the main reason why I'm here.
Thank you. Maria?
Hello, my name is Maria and I'm doing an internship at Reshape.
Pascal?
Good morning, everyone. Sorry for my camera, which is not working with the new update anyway of Zoom. But I'm a criminologist and I'm a scientific collaborator for the German National Prevention Mechanism, but I only speak in my name today.
Elisabeth?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Elisabeth. I work for the University College Vives in Kortrijk, Belgium. I'm a criminologist as well, and I teach students about detention, punishment, offenders, and victims. And I'm also involved in the education of the new staff in detention centers in Belgium.
Thank you. Chiara? I'm not sure if I pronounce that right.
Yes, it's Chiara. Hello. I am a social worker. I come from Italy. and I'm going to do my internship at Reshape in September.
Great. Anaïs?
Hi, I'm Anaïs Jonks. I'm a researcher in criminology at the French Correctional Administration Academy.
Manu?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Manu Bentlon. I'm from Belgium. I'm a criminologist as well, as many of us, and I'm the Belgian coordinator of Reskilled. So nice to see you all.
Mafalda?
Hi, I'm Mafalda. I am a volunteer with Reshape, and I've been assisting to some of your sessions that Marco advises to.
Elis?
Hello, everyone. I'm a law student, and I'm part of a law students association where we are focusing on a project that will be focusing on human rights in prisons. And so we are at the moment partnering with Reshape to talk about that subject.
Thank you. Wairo?
Hi, everyone. I'm Wairo, and I'm part of Restorative Justice in the Netherlands.
Marie-Odile?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I am member, administrator of Farapej, which is member of Rescale, and as I'm a member of the board of Rescale, and involved in WISH projects. And I was, I'm retired. I was a judge before, criminal judge.
Thank you. Hugo?
Hello, my name is Hugo, and I'm an intern for Reskilled in the Netherlands.
Apart from the speakers, did I forget anybody? No? Okay, Tobias, I will make you co-host now for the presentation.
Can you see the presentation?
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, okay, let's check again.
Yes, something is happening now. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks a lot for the opportunity to introduce our program here in Germany. Seehaus, we have two programs, Seehaus Leonberg and Seehaus Leipzig. They're called juvenile prisons in 3 forms. So personally, I prepared myself for 13 years to start an alternative to prison after I got to know this prison system in the United States. And during that preparation, I got to know 3 programs which were role models for me. So I just want to mention them real quickly. One was the Glen Mills Schools in the United States. It was a great program. They wanted to be the best residential school. And in fact, I think in many ways they were. Their foundation was a positive peer culture. They also had confrontative pedagogy. They had very high quality school education, vocational training, and sports. Their main focus was on personality change through behavior change. Unfortunately, I have to say that the institution had to be closed down due to abuse. So I learned a lot from them in the good way, but also in the bad way, what we shouldn't do. So our biggest example is APAC in Brazil. I'll come back to that later. And then the third example was an NGO in Germany, which took in former inmates into their families. So from them, we have the family living concept. And they also have very professional workshops with customer contact. And the main focus is personality change through inner change. So with APAC, it's a very interesting system in Brazil. When I visited them some 30 years ago, I was welcomed. A young man opened us the prison gate and showed us around. And afterwards, somebody said he has a prison sentence of 132 years, and he had the keys of the front gates. So it's an amazing program, and Prison Fellowship Brazil built it up together with the inmates, giving the inmates a lot of responsibility. So here you can see the 12 important parts of their methodology: community participation, recuperandos, helping recuperandos. They don't call them prisoners, but recuperandos, the ones who are on the way of bettering, something like that. Then work is very important, spirituality, legal assistant, health assistant, volunteers, social reintegration centers with different steps, half closed regime, half open regime. Then merit, that you can move your way up, human valorization, and a liberation journey. So they have now 64 APAC programs. So 64 prisons without guards, without police involvement, with more than 6,000 recuperandos. It's an amazing program, and it spreads out around Brazil, and hopefully soon also, maybe with the help of all of us, also in Europe. So now coming to Prison Fellowship Germany, we have started Seehaus Leonberg in 2003 as an alternative to the normal prison system. The former Minister of Justice said, I want a prison, a small group setting away from prison subculture, run by an NGO, better conditions for social learning, and better start in life without crime. We are a closed regime prison. It's a third form of prison next to open regime and closed regime prison, but we have no locks, no bars. So, yeah, the former director of our juvenile prison also made it very clear, said it's important to have open and small scale facilities. He said the more open the prison, the less subculture, and also important is education against or bypassing the peer group is not promising. Therefore, larger closed correctional facilities promote a subculture that is hostile to education with a certain inevitability. So far in Germany, there are 6 programs, 6 prisons in 3 forms. In Saxony, one state, now it's also possible to have prisons in 3 forms for adults. So that's our juvenile prison in Baden-Württemberg, in my home state, where most of our juveniles come from. In Germany, in prison, we also have good programs. We have good educational program, work training programs, and so on. But the problem always, obviously, is the negative prison subculture. And therefore, the former minister said we need a program like that. So the youth are committed into the normal governmental youth prison. And then we are in prison every week and introduce our program to the newcomers in the prison. And then we make a recommendation. The prisoners can write an application, and we have a second interview. And in the end, the prison staff and the prison governor decides who can come to us and who can stay with their whole prison sentence with us. So we have some exclusion criteria. We don't take in any sexual offenses or offenders, but except of that, we take in mostly everybody. So that's our location in Leonberg. As you can see, we have no locks, no bars. The security is not so built-in security, but the security is through relationships, through trust and responsibility. So we have family living units. Most of our guys have never experienced a real family life. And therefore we want them to experience family life. So up to 7 juveniles live together with house parents on our property. So here in Leonberg, we have 3 families. In Saxony, we have 2 families who live together with the juveniles. And obviously, it's a total different atmosphere alone because we have children living with the guys. They open up themselves, they let go of emotions which they would never ever let go of in another atmosphere. You can also see who is the boss at the table on the top left. So that's great to see how they deal with the children and how they take on responsibility, because they know if I talk bad words, the children will say the same words. So they also know why we have certain rules, why we don't use bad language, why we have other rules. Yeah, and for most of them, it's the first time that they experience to share meals at the table together, to play together, to sing together, to have a family life. So very important is a positive peer culture. The concept of positive peer culture says that every juvenile or every human, in fact, has a lot of gifts, and it's important that you show them, oh, you are a very gifted person, and you can use these gifts for yourself and for others, and that you start a culture of helping each other, that juveniles help each other, that they take on responsibility for oneself, for others, for the whole group. So we have a buddy system. If a new guy comes in, another guy explains him what we do, why we do what we do, explains him the rules. Because if we as staff tell them it goes in here and out here. But they do listen to the other juveniles. And if they have a good buddy, it works very well. Obviously, it doesn't always work well, but that can be a very good foundation. And yeah, it's very important to use the group and to use other guys who have been there longer. So we have helpful hints. So the juveniles have to help each other. And if one guy sees that somebody else does something what he shouldn't do, he has to tell him how we don't do that here and explain him why we don't do it and how we can do it better. And in the evening, we can come together for feedback round, where they tell each other again, okay, what didn't go well and what went well. So both of it is a learning experience for them. So far, if somebody has criticized them, they only knew one answer, but also criticizing somebody else in order to help the other person is a new concept for them. But at the same time, receiving appraisal and giving appraisal is a new concept for them as well. And that's very important that they see, okay, if I do something well, I get appraisal. So we have individual sessions, individual council meetings, but we also have group sessions. They are always led by our participants themselves. And it's a group of the guys. One of our staff is sitting with them, but it's a group of the guys, and they lead it and they help themselves. It's the same as I said before. If we would say something and explain everything, most of them probably wouldn't listen, at least in the beginning. The trust has to build up slowly but surely, but they do listen to each other. And also, if I, as a juvenile, explain something to somebody else, I indirectly explain it to myself and help myself to live in a better way. So we discuss different topics about crime, about victims, about addiction, and so on. So it's also very important that they learn responsibility. In the prison system, every responsibility is taken away from them. They don't have to cook, they don't have to clean. They officially have to work in Germany, but if you don't work, you are just locked up in your cell. So all responsibility is taken away from you. So that's not a good environment to learn responsibility. So we try to give them a lot of responsibility for the group, for themselves, but also we have areas of responsibility like heating. If the guy who has the heating responsibility doesn't heat in the morning, the others will have a cold shower. So most likely they will tell him very clearly that he wasn't responsible this morning. So we have phases where they can move up for good behavior and they receive more privileges. And also in the end, from lion candidate, and lions can also go outside, for example, to a sports club or to music or some other events, or they can get their driver's license. So it's important that we open up so they get the chance to go back to the community even while they are with us. So we have a grading system in all areas: how students, school, work, sports, in punctuality, social behavior, homework, and so on, quality of work. So that's a lot of work. Every staff has to sit together with them and tell them how did it go. But it's very important that they get feedback right away. If we would tell them a week later, I would have forgotten it, he would have forgotten it. That's also a huge problem in the German system. A lot of time they come in front of the judge half a year or a year after the offense. They don't even know what the judge is talking about. So it's important that they get feedback right away. And that helps them to make things better, but also they get appraisal right away. Oh, you did something very great. So most of them don't have or have not finished their school education. So it's very important that they get their school education with us. We have our own school where they can learn a trade, and at the same time they can get their GED, their high school diploma. So we have different workshops. Here our woodworking workshop, and we always teach them with things we make for customers. Because if I do something which I throw away afterwards, or if I build a wall and throw it down afterwards, I'm not motivated. But if I build something for a customer and I can see afterwards the customer is very happy, that gives me satisfaction. It makes me proud of what I've done. And shows me I can do something, I have gifts, I have abilities which are also acknowledged in the society. Or at our construction carpentry workshop, if you stand on top of the roof, you can be proud of something. And for most of them, it's the first time that they are proud of something positive. They have been proud of many things, but not so often for something positive. Or our metal workshop, and also landscaping, and also sports and leisure time activities are very important, that they learn to what to do in their leisure time, because often that's the biggest problem. If they come out, if they are not able to build up positive friendships, they will look sooner or later for friends, and the easiest way to find friends is to smoke pot with somebody, or meet people who drink or do illegal things. But to build up positive friendships is a long way. So that's important that we also try to build these relationships up already from here, and also that they learn things where they can meet positive friends on the outside. So we also have other leisure time activities, and it's important that they see I don't need alcohol, I don't need drugs to get a kick. You are all welcome to join us the 1st of January. We go ice bathing. So I can see some volunteers, right? Many of them are also gifted in music, art, or theater, which they probably don't even know beforehand. So we also teach them that and help them to find a hobby for themselves. We also have a part with confrontational pedagogy. The concept says, okay, that it is important to confront somebody, even though it's even much more important to give positive feedback. So it says 80% positive feedback, but also 20% confrontational feedback. So it is important to tell them what they have done, and to tell them whom they have hurt, and that they take on responsibility for what they have done. So we also have a program victim and offenders in conversation, where unrelated victims and offenders meet for 6 times in a group setting. So that gives the victims the possibility to tell their stories of suffering, and to get rid of their emotions, of their anger, and to tell their story into the face of offenders, even though they are not their own offenders. And so for many of them, it's a starting of a healing process or a continuation of the healing process. For the offenders on the other side, it's most of the time the very first time that they really think about it. What have I done to the victims? For them, it took 5 minutes and then it was forgotten, but that the victims suffer 20 years later, they can't even imagine. But then if they meet 6 victims and hear their suffering stories, that goes under the skin, and that changes their thinking, and that victim empathy can start. So in the end, they do a symbolic restoration to the present victims, and they also write letters to their victims. Whether they are sent to the victims, we discuss together and see whether it's helpful for the victims or not. And oftentimes then they also want to meet with their real victim, and we see whether we can make that possible, because that's very important for both parties. So we also have community service, as they have heard victims, individuals, but they also have heard the community. Therefore, it's important that they give something back to the community. So here we renovated a concentration camp memorial, or we have a graffiti fire engine where we take away graffiti, or they help in an elderly home, or we do environment, I can't say it, projects. Yeah, it's important that they give back to the community. We are a member of Diaconia, so we, as staff, we want to live faith by example. We have a daily impulse for the day, counseling. Sundays we have church service. It's voluntary. They can choose between the church service or ethics. Obviously, most of our guys are not Christians. Most of the time we have more than 50% Muslims. So it's important for us to have a very open conversation, and to that they learn to respect each other, also if they have different faiths or different worldviews, and that you can accept each other. But at the same time, that it is important to think about what are my values, and what is the basis for my life. The family relationships are also very important. So families can come to visit twice a month, and there are different activities with the families, and we also have workshops for family members, visit them at home. We would like to do more in that area, but at least we do something. So that's the daily schedule. We start at 5:45 is jogging until 10 o'clock at night. It's a full program with quiet time, breakfast, and house duties. They are allowed to smoke, but only 3 times a day. Then after the impulse for the day, they have work or school. And then in the evenings, they helpful hints. And in the evenings, there's always a different program. So community involvement is also very important. We have godparents, we have volunteers, churches, public institutions, clubs, and we do activities for and with the community, so they get to know community members. So, for example, the godparents visit the guys here and then do activities with them here, and also after they are released. So the volunteers are a bridge into the community. Because oftentimes an institution like ours is closed and is an island. So we try to break that island that we go out, as others come here, that we work with volunteers. Obviously, aftercare is also very important, that we prepare them very well. And very fortunately, we were able to that all of them except of one, 99%, received work afterwards. And that's very important that they find work, that they can enter into the work in a work relationship. So we also cooperate with the probation service. They always can stay in contact with us as staff or volunteers. We often have families who take in former inmates from us. And we understand ourselves as a lifelong fellowship. So we take them into families, and the family doesn't end, family relationships. So even if they have problems 10 years after they have been here, they can come to us and we try to help them. So yeah, in regards to the funding, we receive the running costs from the Ministry of Justice, and otherwise we get donations. So that's how we can run the programs. So that was the juvenile program. So our juvenile prison in 3 forms, but maybe for an outlook, for us, restorative justice is very important as an approach that focuses on the victim's need in repairing harm caused by wrongdoing while holding offenders responsible for their actions. So this can be achieved best when the parties involved come together and address their needs and responsibilities, and that they seek a resolution that brings healing, accountability, and reconciliation, and prevents also future harm. So we try to do that in our different programs. Next to the juvenile program, juvenile prison and free forms, we also have victim support services. We also have victim empathy trainings in prison, or we also run one living unit in a prison, and we also are in the area of prevention. And in all what we do, we try to do it out of such a restorative justice lens. Okay, so far from us.
Thank you so much, Tobias. Are there any questions? Then you can raise your hand and then I will give you the floor. Oh, Pascal?
No, sorry, it was just a thumb up. I just wanted to thank Tobias for the presentation. No question so far.
Okay. I do have a question. I really liked, because you have a very clear methodology. And at the same time, you mentioned in your presentation, I also learned from Glenn Mills what didn't work. Can you maybe explain a bit about that?
Well, the Glenn Mills schools, it used to be a total rundown institution where the gangs actually were leading the institution. And then a new person came on board and was leading the institution. And he came up to the gang leaders and said, okay, so far you have run the institution. Now I'm the new director. We can work together and then you can still run the institution, but in a positive way. And he won over the gang leaders, and then together they established a great concept. And they have great possibilities, and yeah, it was a great program. But there was one problem, that the staff had a lot of power and they had too much power. And unfortunately, some of the staff abused their power, and so there was a lot of abusive behavior from staff in the Glenn Mills schools, and because of that, the school had to be closed down. Yeah, it shows that even in a great program, things can move into the program which will eventually destroy the program or which also will help the juveniles, even though it was meant to help the juveniles. So I think we as institution have to be very careful and do a research and look into it. Okay, are we still sticking to our original vision? And is it really put into practice in the same way by our staff? Or is there a danger that will come abuse into it?
So in a way, it sounds like it's the Philip Zimbardo prison experiment real life.
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, okay. That's and Marie-Odile, you have a question?
Yes. Thank you, Tobias. You say that you make exclusion for sexual offenders. Why? And where do this kind of juvenile go, finally?
Right. There are several reasons why we exclude sexual offenders. For one, in prisons, there's a special unit for sexual offenders. And obviously, when we started our program, our neighbors were very happy that we have prisoners moving here. So obviously, the community first doesn't want it. And if we would have had sexual offenders, it would have been even more difficult. But also the reason for us ourselves is we live together with families, with children, and therefore we cannot take in sexual offenders because then the risk would be too great for the children.
Okay.
Danielle.
So, quick question. During the course of the programs, have you seen any common ground between the criminal and social background and the overall results, in the sense of certain individuals with any specific kind of crime behavior, either it be shoplifting or drug abuse or any other subject, are more prone to a successful program, or not?
Not really. It doesn't depend so much on the offenses, but it depends whether the juveniles open up themselves and really want to change. And I think everybody can change if they want to change, but obviously they need help in that process. And our main focus is on violent offenders, but the program also works for other offenders. And it's always amazing, where it works and where it doesn't work. Often the guys, we think, oh, well, it will not work out. It will work out afterwards. That's also interesting. The guys who move through the programs without any problems, mostly the ones who will fall back afterwards. But the guys who go up and down and have to fight through the program, they learn to fight. And therefore, they are the ones who are more likely to be successful on the outside.
And when it comes to the engagement with the family and the family members, do they tend to be optimistic and positive and see it in a positive regard, in a positive perspective, or some of them fall back and don't want to be present?
If the family members want to help the guys in their positive way, is that the question?
Yes. If in the overall sense you see that the families want to help, want to be present, right, or if there are examples of they just want to keep their distance.
Right. It totally depends. We have some guys who don't receive any visits, but most of them do receive visits.
Nice.
And
yes.
A lot of families do want to support. And they also see the difference when they visit their son in prison or when they visit them here. But there are also families who don't support it and encourage the guy to be deviant. The first guy who fled from us, I was sure that he was at home. So I brought all the luggage home and talked to the parents, and the father was very proud because his son was one day longer in freedom than when he fled from prison 20 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And in the end, it came out that the guy was lying underneath the sofa where I was sitting on. So we have parents who support it, and I would say more parents support it, but unfortunately there are also parents who do not support it, and then obviously it's much more difficult for the guys to have a real change.
Okay, thank you.
There's an interesting comment in the chat. Elisabeth, can I ask you to maybe say it as well? Also your thanks to Tobias, but also the tip.
Okay, yes, of course. I just put it in the chat because there's not that much to add at this point, I think. But your story reminded me of, it was 15 to 20 years ago. I worked in the States for a while as a counselor in an alternative school for troubled teenagers, is what it's called. And I've also got to know Glen Mills as one of the good projects there. And it just reminded me the way you talked about your project in Germany, reminded me of the schools that I worked in. And it's an organization who has group homes, schools, but also a lot of education for professionals, master degrees and such, which is called International Institute for Restorative Practices. And because you were talking about the importance of restorative justice in your centers as well, I thought I will, I don't know if you need more inspiration. I don't think so, actually, because okay, well, so it's in the chat. Because I saw that you began to say that you've been looking for good practices in Brazil, in the States and other places, I guess. Yeah. It's just there.
Yeah, thanks a lot. No, obviously we always need to learn more, and as soon as we stop moving forward, we'll fall back.
Yeah, and also sometimes it's good to be in a group, in an international group, sometimes like this, to support each other as well. So
yes, definitely.
Thank you. Beautiful words. Manu, three more questions. Manu.
First of all, thank you very much for this inspiring presentation, Tobias. I think I have just one quick question, because I know here in Belgium they are thinking of introducing like a scoring system in the prison system for checking their cells if it is clean, and then the counselors need to give points. But it's really like they are more thinking of punishments when it's not going that well. I'm questioning how you are doing that. Is it especially more focused on rewards if it's going good, or how are you handling this scoring system?
Right. The goal is that they see, okay, if I have good behavior, it's worth it, and I also get something back. So the goal is to give them positive feedback, but obviously for some things you can't give positive feedback, so you have to also be very clear what behavior is not wanted. But the goal is to give them positive feedback and to show them, okay, it's worth it to behave in a certain way. It's worth it to help each other. It's worth it to respect each other. So to teach them values through a positive feedback.
Okay, and is it the whole team that is giving this points, or is it one person in? Okay.
The whole team.
Okay.
So always there's a person he works with. So the trade teacher or the school teacher or the sports teacher or the house parents, they do it with them.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Sarah?
Thank you so very much, Tobias, for your presentation and all of the knowledge you've been transmitting. I have just two questions I wanted to place you. The first one would be, you mentioned that you had some troubles with the community around the house, and that is to be expected. But do you have any kind of example? How did you mitigate those kind of issues? Did you create some kind of programs around them as well?
Right.
Tobias, you answered. Sarah, can I ask you to maybe share something about Reshape? Because the previous name of Reshape is actually APAC Portugal. So there's many similarities. So maybe it's nice for Tobias to know a bit more about Reshape.
So yes, about that. So Reshape is APAC Portugal. So we brought some of the ideas to Portugal in terms of trying to implement a transition house, and therefore we are still trying to implement this project. And as we are very close to implementing the transition houses, that's why I was asking this question, because we are expecting obviously some kind of constrictments in society regarding this subject. And obviously your experience could be translated and implemented in terms of facilitating this process.
Right. So we were expecting problems with the community beforehand, and so we made a great plan how we go about it. And when we inform the neighbors, when we inform the mayor, when we inform the other community, but then there was a notice in the media, and all our plans were gone. So then we went to all the neighbors on the same day when it was in the press, and informed them individually. And the interesting part was all the neighbors we met who didn't read the article beforehand were positive, and we didn't reach two of them, and so we couldn't inform them personally. So they read it from the newspaper, and then they started their resistance. And what was very important is that the mayor and most of the city council members supported us from the beginning, and also during the resistance. And also there was a pro initiative, and yeah, we went from door to door, and we also had open meetings when we invited the community to tell them about the project. So I think that's very important. And also we worked very closely with the media, and in the end, I would say if there is a resistance, it's great, because your program will be known much more than if there would be no resistance. We were in the media for about 1 year every second day. I couldn't have paid for that. So in the end, it was great, but obviously it's not nice while you are in it.
It's the double-edged sword, I guess, then. Sorry, I just had one more question, and it's very specific. You mentioned the families living together in those houses, and you showed some pictures with very little children in them. So my question is, how do you mitigate the risks of child exposure to potential risky behaviors that might happen in these houses?
Right. Well, we do live together as a family. The families have their own flat where they can retreat. Every second weekend is free and 1 day in a week. But during the rest of the time, the living unit is the middle of their life. So also for the children, obviously there are rules. The children cannot go into the rooms of the juveniles. The juveniles cannot go into the flat of the family. And there's always staff in the living unit. So far, we never had any problem. The guys respect children, and if they would see that somebody does something bad to a child, also others would react immediately. So important is that there is never a situation where a child is alone with one of the guys. So that doesn't happen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tobias, in your presentation, you mentioned community service, and then you explained a bit more about what the boys were doing for the community. And later on, you mentioned community involvement, and it seemed that that was more related of the community becoming involved with the boys. Is this also to concepts you used in the plan? Because I like the distinction that it works both ways.
Exactly. It's very important that the community takes part into the program. Like one example that we also have from APAC Brazil is a godparenting model. That people from the community become godparents of one of the guys and are friends to him and accompany him during the program and then also after they get released. But also the volunteers who are part here. It's a great help for us to have so many volunteers. We can offer many more things and often in more professional ways because volunteers help with their profession. But the most important is that they are linked into the community. So the guys get to know community members who live in a positive way because often their culture, they have never met anyone who lived in a positive way. They didn't have positive role models. So it's important for them that they get to know positive role models also from the community. They think we as staff, okay, we have to say what we say, we have to live what we live because we are staff. But that people in the community live in the same ways, they can't even imagine. So that's very important to have that link into the community and that they get to know community members, but also vice versa, that the community gets to know us. And yeah, we had the subject that there's a lot of resistance when we start, but many of the people, or even the people who started the resistance, have become volunteers afterwards. And that's also great that through our programs, not only the guys are changed, but also the community is changing and the thought about how we deal with juvenile offenders is changing.
Thank you. Mark, last question.
Yeah, thank you, Tobias, for your very interesting presentation. Just requesting one clarification. I understand that this program is dedicated to males. Is there any such project for females?
Right. Fortunately, the need is much less. There are only 5% female prisoners.
Sure.
Unfortunately, we don't have a program ourselves for females, but in Saxony, there's now a program for female adults. So prison and free forms for female adults. So hopefully we'll have more and more programs for women as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tobias. Let's have a 5-minute break and then come back to and then start with Berit. Is that okay? Okay, 5 minutes. See you back at 11. Hello, everyone. Wait for a few more seconds. Okay. So before we start, there are some people that joined during the last talk, and I forgot to ask Connor. So maybe Connor, the people that are new, I will just ask them to briefly say who they are. Connor, start with you. If he's there back from his, maybe, and Maria, you joined as well. And another person, Isabelle.
Hello everybody. So I'm Isabelle Leroux and I'm an associate professor at Angers University, specialized in economics.
Okay, thank you. So I think Connor and Maria aren't here yet. So let's start. Connor. Hey, Connor. I forgot to ask you to maybe introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Connor. I'm the European Program Manager at Rescaled. Short and sweet.
Thank you. Maria?
Is this me? You're talking about maybe yes. Marta? No.
It's you.
It's Marta, sorry. That's
Marta, I'm so sorry. Sorry,
it's
Marta.
fine, don't worry. And my apologies for being late. I'm a lawyer from Portugal. I've recently started to work with inmates, and I'm generally interested in the topic. So I'm just willing to learn a little bit more. Don't think I will have much to add, but I'm seriously interested in listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. So Berit, before you start the presentation, can I maybe ask you to briefly reflect on what Tobias presented?
Yes, I can do that. I had actually a question for Tobias, but I couldn't find my hand to how I raised the hand. I'm not used to the Zoom system. I'm more on Teams. So I would very much like to know, and we can take this in the discussion afterwards, how they train the staff in these units, and also if former residents or former guys that have served the sentence in these houses, if they could be trained as staff and start working as staff afterwards. And also how the user perspective, they have meetings, of course, but the user perspective, how this is maintained throughout the whole running of this kind of prisons or detention houses. I think it's very interesting. It's a totally new concept, and I've heard a little bit about APAC before, and it was very, very interesting to see how this actually works in Europe, in a country in Europe, how it's run, how they think, how their philosophy is, and also how they stick to the kind of visions and that APAC have, and for sure it's a lot of things that we could take with us and bring into the Rescale movement and learn from these kinds of institutions, how they work. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And I will ask Tobias after your presentation to reflect on you as well, and give him the floor to answer your questions as well. Okay, I will make you co-host so you can present. Yeah.
Here we are. Then I have share screen. I have 3 screens here, so it's always exciting to see which one pops up. This one, think, share, and then I go like this. Do you see this one?
Yes. Yeah.
Or is it just, do you see just a part of the picture or the whole picture in a kind of
whole picture, but also the second the second slide.
Okay, so this is how this works. Let's. Why does it?
It works like this as well. It's just a teaser every time. We become curious to the next slide.
Stop share. I try to stop share and share again. Oh, I have to get my mouse. Sorry about this. It's a kind of.
Okay.
Why cannot I stop share? Try again. Okay, here we are. And I try to run it this way. Okay. My name is Berit Johnson. I work as a research professor at the University College of Norwegian Correctional Service. And we are the only institution in Norway that educate prison officers. And I come back to that, a little bit more about the education of prison officers. We are a university college. This means that they have grades, and we are an in-service training. We are a part of the correctional service in Norway. And I'm also a board member of Rescaled. And at our institution, we have done several research projects on the the living conditions of the inmates and the quality of their of prison life. And what we find, I cannot, now it won't move. Sorry about this. I need to connect back together. It won't flip over to the next slide. I don't know why. Okay, I will share another screen with you, but that means that I won't be looking at you. I'll be looking at the other screen. Okay. Let's see. You see this one?
Yes.
But I won't be able to your screen sharing stop. What is going on that I cannot move to the next slide? How's that?
I don't know. Maybe if you do it the other way, you just did it before, that we see the second one.
Okay.
Which is fine as well.
Let's try. Do you see this one?
We do, yes.
Okay, let's use this one. Sorry about this.
That's okay.
So what we see in the studies that we have conducted here at KRUS, which are the University College of the Correctional Service, is that staff-prison relationships are at the heart of prison life. And this is not only the research that we have done that proves this, but also all the studies that are studying the quality of prison life show this, that the staff-prisoner relationship is very decisive for how the prisoners and also staff experience the quality of life in prison. In 2006, 2007, we conducted a prison survey of the quality of prison life in all closed prisons in Norway. And the results in total were like this, where 3 is a kind of neutral score. Above 3 is a good score, a positive score, and below 3 is a negative score. And the dimension that I want you to look at is this one, the relationship to staff. This is the results from the prisoners. Og forhold til innsatte. I'm sorry, this is in Norwegian. But as you see, this wasn't particularly good. It was 2.99. And we did this study on commission of the Ministry of Justice because they were then writing up a new white paper about the correctional service in Norway. And they thought, I think, that the Norwegian scores would be very good because they thought that Norwegian prisons were better, among other things, than English prisons, where this kind of study has been conducted earlier. But the results showed that these prisons, that Norwegian prisons in total weren't that much better. It was this score, 0.343, personal safety was quite good, but elsewise it was quite similar to scores that they have found in the in prisons in especially England and Wales. But when we have reported on this results to the Ministry of Justice, we started to analyze further, and then we found that there were significant differences on depending how large the prison was. And we are now in Norway. When we talk about small prisons, and it's the blue line is the results for the small prisons, they have less than 50 prisoners. The red line is the results from the medium-sized prisons that takes between 51 and 100 prisoners. And large prison in the Norwegian scale is green. You see the result is green, and they take more than 100 prisoners. So what we see is we have significant differences that the small prisons that takes less than 50 prisoners have better scores, or the quality of life of prisoners and stuff. I just showing you the results from the inmates here. You see that they are significantly better than in medium-sized and large prisons. And especially this one is particularly interesting, and that is relationship with staff. But because it's the same, the relationship with staff is very decisive for how the prisoners experience their life in prison. Yeah. We did the same study in 2013-14 in open prison, because Norway has open prisons as well, quite many open prisons. And then we see that the open prison, that these are the red scores, they are like you see here, and they are also higher all in general on all the dimensions that is measured, but also the relationship with staff scores 3.32, which is a quite high score, one of the highest scores, together with personal safety scores high, and also the equality of treating people with different ethnic belongings quite similar. So these are the highest scores, and especially this one to relationship with staff is very decisive. One of the prisons that had the best score was Leira prison, a prison in the middle of Norway. It's a farm. It's an open prison, as you can see on the picture up on the right. There is no bars, no fences, and so on. And in this prison, they have a greenhouse. You can see a little bit of it behind there, and prison and staff work together, and they are out on trips. They have a jogging track all around this area. You cannot actually spot where the prison starts and where it ends, because there are no visibles fences or that tell us then now we are in a prison. But here we see, and this is the highest score I ever seen in any of the studies that we have done and any other studies, that the relationship to staff scores 4.35. It's a very high score. And we also see that the scores are particularly high in this prison. In all the prisons, these are prisons, all the prisons in Norway are state-run prisons. We don't have any private prisons. Prisoners can serve the sentence in open institutions like drug treatment institution and so on. But most of the prisoners in Norway serve the sentence in state prison. Either they are high security or lower security or halfway houses. And in this prison, it works staff work which are educated in our institution. And a prison officer in Norway has a 2 year of education, which give 120 credits. They start the first semester in-house training at the campus. The second and third semester, they are in a prison doing prison work, but they also have teaching there. And the fourth semester, they are back in at campus again. If you look at this, Cruise 2000 or Cruise 2000, it's safety, security, and risk managers. It's 30 credits. They continue with this one in the fourth semester as well. They also start with community reintegration and social work, 20 credits, while they are at training prisons. And then they continue in the last year with 15 credits. They also have professional knowledge and ethics. That is an important part of the study, 7.5 credits, closely tied to the starting with the introduction to the role of the prison officer. As a part-time study, the prison officer in Norway can also take a third year to become a bachelor in correctional studies. And you see how this is part-time, where they take 15 credits each semester. So prison staff, compared to many other countries, are well educated in Norway, and that is an important factor when it comes to building relationship with prisoners, which is one of their most important tasks when they work as a prison officer. The latest study we conducted with of the quality of prison life was in some new prisons that Norway have been built just recently, that just opened a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. These are built according to a standardized model. It is a very traditional panopticon model with a central where you have wings that goes out of from this central core of the building. These results are so new, they aren't published yet, they are under peer review. Sorry again, it's in Norwegian. But if you look at the dimension with relationship to staff, it is a quite neutral score, a little bit about 3, the same score that 1 to 5 Likert scale, where 3 is a kind of neutral score, above is positive, and beneath it's a kind of negative score. But what we see is that they score quite well on the question where the prisoners have answered that staff on this wing are kind to me. It's quite a high score. And also the score that staff on this wing treat me with respect, quite high scores. The lowest scores is about procedural justice. That is how that prison officers explain to prisoners why they cannot have this leave, or why the decision to move to another wing has not been accepted, and so on. So to explain why things are like they are, they have something. We have to take that into the education, so they learn how to do this. The thing about these new prisons is that the officer's office is not in connection with the units. if you see a picture here that gives a kind of idea how this is, it is an illustrating from above, you see that the office for the prison officers is here. It's a door, and then you have the units here. So the officers have to leave their office and move to the wings if they're going to talk with inmates, and prisoners have to call the prison officers in the office to open the doors or let them out wherever they need to go. And this separation between officers and prisoners was something that staff were they didn't like it. They did want to be more out in the units. And this is because we did a survey. We also collected some qualitative data or information where we talked to prison officers. And they said, one of them said, to have respect, I have to be in there and talk to people. This goes both ways. And another prison officer said, I want to be there, and this is out at the units where the prisoners are, but also the prisoners don't want me there. And this is because they become alienated in a way at the wings, because they are not there on regular basis. They just move into the wings when they have something to do there. They cannot sit down on a couch, socialize. It's a kind of awkward. And that is what the prison officers complain about. We should have been more into the wings and socialized with the prison officers, and also to build relationship, because that they know that is a very, very important part of the job. Some other quotation from the prisoners officer, or what they said, it was, we don't hear anything, and we don't spot things on the screen, or when we spot things on the screen, it could be too late. This is about dynamic security, because dynamic security, you don't do dynamic security by looking at the screen. When you do or working with dynamic security, you use your whole body. You are there, you are present, you smell, you feel, you see, you can feel the atmosphere is changing. And this is a crucial part when you work in small prisons, because the static security is there, but you are much more, you have to rely much more on the dynamic security approach to be present and to use time when you want something done. In the open prisons, this is the total score. We asked the prisoners to score the prisons between 1 to 10. And this is scores from all the prisons, open prisons that was included in this study. And we see that 3 prisons with the highest score was Bastøy prison, 7.43. It was Hassel prison, it is closed down now, 8.50. And Leira prison again, 8.56. All these prisons with the 3 highest scores are farms. They work in a farm, they work together with, staff work together with prison officers. At Bastøy, not many trained prison officers work together with the prisoner, but the staff at the workshops work together with the prisoners. There are farms, but there are other farms here as well. So we just started, because these are quantitative data that tells us this is how it is, but it doesn't tell us why is it like this. So when we started to reflect, what is it about these prisons that can explain these quite good scores, we find that these prisons have a kind of ideology or a kind of theory of how people exist and how they exist together. Bastøy, they have a kind of, they work in accordance to a human ecological perspective. When Hassel was operated, Hassel was a former school for problematic pupils, young boys, and they have been working according to activity theory. And some of the staff that had worked on the specialized school also educated themselves to prison officers and worked in the prison afterward, and brought with them this kind of approach of activity theory. Later, work in accordance to consequent pedagogics. This is taken from Denmark, from Jens Bay and his training school in Denmark. And staff at Leida have, I think it's 10 or 15 credits course on consequent pedagogics. So it seems like these kind of ideological or kind of theoretical approaches that gives you an idea how people behave, how people act together, what are the basic needs of a person and so on, that when staff are trained or get to know to learn this, they work in a kind perhaps of a similar way that makes the whole prison experience for the prisoners more predictable. And also this is very humanistic approach, that you see the human being in that offender person, and also that it is a kind of changing approach, or it's about learning, like activity theory and also consequent pedagogics is about learning. So it's like this kind of fundamental that is in the basic for how the prison officers work is very important, but we don't have much data on this. These are just thoughts for us, and this would have been very exciting to do more studies about. And also in Tobias' perspective, this kind of religious or church, or it gives a kind of basic for how you work with people. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Berit. So again, if there are questions, if you go to below reactions, you can raise your hand. But first, Berit, thank you very much. I have a question about relationship, because at the start you mentioned how important the relationship is between staff and people living in a small scale facility or prison. Is the relationships that important that it actually undermines the importance of methodology?
This is the methodology. I think that staff to work for prison officers, to how the prison officers approach a prisoners, how you establish the first conversation, how you behave, how you enter the wing is a kind of methodology. So this kind of working with relationships is a methodology that is very, very important, that staff learns when they become prison officers or are going to work in a prison. So I'll say that is a methodology.
Okay. Are there any questions? Because then I will continue on this topic, because because you are working for a training academy, of course, so where people are trained, and I wonder how you see the informal and formal training, because as a human being, relations between from me towards another person, it's always very flexible, and it can never be caught in protocols or a fixed methodology that's how I should behave with other people. So I wonder in what way it's possible to train staff in relationships.
I think that when you recruit people that are not interested in other people. It's hard for them to be prison officers or start to work with other people. And if you see social work, what is that about? It's about relationship, how to build relationship, how to establish relationship. In prisons, you also have social workers. And when you observe them working with prisoners, they can just sit down, and they sit down together with them, and they sit there for quite a long time without talking, but just to feel how the interaction is building, or you observe, is the prisoners moving away? Is he approaching? Is he signalizing in a kind of, by not talking, that he would have some contact and so on. And you have to learn to know each and one person to actually work with them in social work, which also staff is expected to do. So I think that, yes, it's a part of you. It's about your personality, of course, how well you are to, or how good you are in making contact with people and so on. But it's also something that you have to, can be trained, and also something that you have to become aware of. How do you approach? How do you do this? And it's in these very, very small details, prison officers' professionalism is actually comes into force. And it's very, very fascinating to see.
It's interesting to hear more about it. One of the goals of the WISH EU project is writing guidelines on relational security. Mm-hmm. So your input will be very important in this, and also the practices of Tobias in all of this. So thank you. And Tobias has shared something in the chat. And Tobias, can I ask you now maybe also to answer the questions that Berit raised, and also reflect on the presentation by Berit?
Thank you. So the link I shared, I just saw it the other day on LinkedIn. I thought it was very interesting. It's a prison project where US prison officials went to Scandinavia to learn how prisons are unfair and bring back that. And it shows that relationships and environment make a huge difference in prisons. So it's worth seeing it, I think. So the first question I remember is former guys, whether they can be trained as staff. It would be great. So far, we don't have a former guy on staff, but we have many of them who come back and visit and also volunteer and tell the actual guys how their experience was, what happened afterwards, what difficulties come up afterwards. So we do involve former guys. Hopefully one day we'll also have former guys as staff.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
The second question I didn't understand. Can you repeat that?
Or the user voice. How I see that from your presentation, I see that you have meetings with the guys regularly, and how do they? It's a part of learning to how could they raise their voice and be heard in a way that their wishes and need is taken into account, and their perspectives in a way are guidelines for how these kind of institutions are run.
Right, otherwise that's very important. The more they will feel part of the system, the more they identify with the system. So if we include them and ask them, and if they can make suggestions, and if they also can change something, the better it is. We try to implement that in our program. We have that phase system, and like we have a meeting where all the guys who have the highest ranks, so to say, meet and make suggestions what we should change, and they ask before that the other guys. So all of them can give input. And together with them, we think about what can we make better. Obviously, our guys are only with us for 1 or 1.5 years. So in Brazil, they are there for many years, and so the amount of responsibility in APAC Brazil is much, much higher than in our program. And we try to work towards that we can pass on more and more responsibilities to the guys.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Berit, I was wondering, one of the quotes we used on the flyer is by Karl Popper. As a researcher, you might know, our knowledge can only be finite, while our ignorance must necessarily be infinite. And to make it very simple, we shouldn't, as a movement, as Reskilled, or when we're talking about small-scale detention facilities, we should not only look for the white swans, see what's going wrong, but right, but we should also look at the black, try to find the black swan, like what is going wrong, or what is not perfect, or what could be better. And I was wondering, you mentioned the farms. And I know one of the things I heard more often when we're talking about the benefits or the great things about small scale detention facilities is that they are all going well, but at the same time, it's often correlated with admission criteria. So only the best people from prison are selected to become part, for example. So how did you include this in your research?
We didn't include this in the research, but we do know that, for example, a small prison that we just visited 2 weeks ago, Horten Fengsel, it takes 13 inmates or something like that. They can pick their inmates. It's for vulnerable inmates, so they have to take care that they don't have any bullies in, because these inmates would be isolated in a larger prison because they have been bullied or whatever. So it's always in some prisons, that small prisons, they choose which kind of inmate because they applied for going there. But at the same time, like Leira prison, they don't take the good guys. They take the bad guys as well. That would actually be a kind of, they are the one who bullies other prisoners. In larger prisons, they have a strong negative impact on the prison environment in the units where they are, and so on. And you see that some of these prisoners, they might be strongly negative in larger prisons, but when we come to a small prison, they start to behave. They start to understand, and they are confronted with their behavior and how their behavior actually have an impact on other people. So that is a part of the training. And if you look at Jens Beide training school in Denmark, which has been the model for Leira prison, they only take the worst boys that are actually have been in prison for many, many times. They are the ones that are in this training school. So this goes both ways. Sometimes some prisons well picked, while other prisons actually take the worst cases. But at the same time, they know if they don't behave, they will be sent back to a very high security level, or to another prison that is not give them these opportunities that they have in the prison, that small prison that they arrive to.
Thank you. Tobias, can I ask you as well to maybe reflect on the presentation of Berit?
Yeah, I think it's very true, and we experience the same thing. I mean, it's the most important is relationship. If you don't have relationships, you can't teach anything, because yes, the guys only learn through relationships and through positive examples. So yeah, relationships and environment and also scale is very important. We have up to 20 juveniles, but in 3 groups. So each group is only up to 7 juveniles. So the smaller the group setting, the better you can have a relationship, and the better you can have a positive influence, and also you can have a positive peer culture. The bigger a prison is, the more difficult it becomes to establish a positive peer culture and to establish positive relationships.
And do you both think that if the methodology is perfect, if there can be a perfect methodology, that it can also be done in a small scale unit of a large prison, or should it be in a small scale detention facility separate? Maybe to both of you, I would like.
Yeah, but irrespective of the size of the prison, staff-prison relationship are found in every studies of the quality of life in prison. That is the most decisive factor. So this is irrespectable, but it's in a large institution that is a big machinery that has to run it's a lot of logistics. You have to be a part of this logistics. So you're, as an individual, it's not as easy to be recognized because you are a part of a much bigger system that has to run, that has to work, find its way. But in small prisons, you see that you can make exception because they aren't so big. They aren't these kind of logistics, instance that decisive for the running of this prison. So you can see the individual, see the needs. You can learn to know them and learn to know the signals when these people are, or when this person is not having a good time without explicitly saying so. You just see how he or she behaves, that she needs a kind of support. So you see the whole individuals. They are visible in another way than they are in this kind of big machinery that has to run in a calm and easy way, I think. So that's the difference. But staff-prison relationship is decisive, irrespective of the size of the prison.
And when you're saying individuals are more easily recognized in a smaller setting, are you also referring to staff, maybe?
Yeah, perhaps it's the staff as well, that you're not a part of a bigger system. That we also see that the quality of life for staff was better in small scale prison than in the larger one. And that is, of course, it's more flexible, most likely, that if you see that the person needs special assistance, something like that, is easier to actually give that and have a kind of meaningful work. Because this prison staff that I show you the quotation from, that was a kind of large prison. It was they really want to be together with the prison. They wanted to build a relationship. They wanted to establish relationships, but they couldn't do that because it was a lot of logistics. It was their place was in the office. The prisoners were in the unit. They had no interaction or natural interaction. Yeah.
And you, Tobias, I know you've been focusing, you have the house, Seehaus, which is a separate house, but you also work within a larger prison and a small scale unit. So what are your thoughts about this?
Well, preferable, there will definitely are small scale prisons outside the normal prison system. It's actually much easier to work there. I always say we have much better conditions than people who work in a normal prison. So it's not a criticism that they are doing bad work. They are doing good work, but in a bad system. So it's much better to have small units and also outside a big prison subculture. But obviously, we have to live in a world where we don't always have ideal conditions. Therefore, it is also possible to work in bigger prisons, like the APAC program from Brazil. Many other national ministries, prison fellowship ministries, or also others have adopted the program. But
is only my connection bad, or is it with Tobias?
I think it's
no, he's frozen.
Okay. Oh, Tobias, I don't know if you can hear me, but your connection is now frozen. We'll wait a bit. Yes, I see some movement.
Okay.
Welcome
Did
back.
you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Perfect. So, yeah. And now, not anymore. You managed almost until the end, if you hear me now.
Okay, now I can hear you again.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Okay. Sorry, yes, you were talking about the two units, and that it's always better than.
Right, but it's still possible to run a positive peer culture within an overall negative peer culture, but it's much more difficult. So yeah, I would always prefer a small prison unit outside, but it's also important to work inside prisons if that is not possible.
I find it very interesting that you also do both and not only focus on outside, and it's the classic what's the word, the classic debate about being an abolitionist, so not have any prisons, and prison reform, like only focusing on reforming prisons. Well, we can also have a third way, which is doing both, like both have the horizon. You want to have open prison, but still work on the current reality. And I think it's amazing. I hope you can hear me because you're frozen again, but it's amazing that you doing that with Seehaus, doing both, this third path. Okay, are there any questions? Otherwise, I will conclude, unless you, Berit or Tobias, want to add something to what you've been saying that I forgot to ask, or feel free.
No, I don't think so. Very interesting. Thank you for all the presentation and your sharing thoughts. It has been very, very interesting to listen. Yeah.
Yeah, I also don't have anything to add except of thanking you and also movement. It's great that we can work together for small prisons all over Europe. And so hopefully we all will be successful within our countries, but also within Europe, and that many more governments will rethink how they will do prisons, what kind of prison systems they want, and that we have much more rescaled small prison units.
Or Seehaus and all these different type of names, as long as they're smaller scaled, that's good. And yeah, I'm glad that we can support each other in this way. And it will be recorded. It is recorded and it will be placed on the YouTube, so more people can watch it. Next session is June 6th, which will be about staff. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.